Her heels clicked softly against the polished floor, each step steady, controlled. Eyes followed her, some curious, others dismissive, a few openly judging. She kept her gaze forward, lips set, as though refusing to acknowledge the silent. Weight pressing against her, a couple whispered near the gate. "She walks like she owns the place." The man smirked. The woman added quietly, "People like her always try too hard." The words brushed her ears. She didn't slow down. Her grip tightened around the folder in her hand. Contracts, proof of her authority. The kind of evidence that should speak louder than appearances. But she knew how fragile perception could be. She stopped at a counter briefly. The attendant gave a glance that lingered a second too long, eyes flicking from her, skin to her suit. "Morning," she offered calmly. The voice was polite, professional, but laced with that quiet test of worth. "Morning," the woman replied, sliding her documents across without hesitation. The attendant's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Long flight ahead?" Her voice remained steady. "Business doesn't wait." The attendant hesitated, lips parting as if to question further, but stopped. That hesitation was louder than words. She gathered her things and stepped away. Behind her, someone muttered, "She's too confident for her own good." Her chest tightened, but she didn't turn. She reminded herself, dignity wasn't a costume. It was a posture she'd spent years perfecting. Each stride was proof she belonged, no matter how many whispers rose in her wake. The terminal air felt colder, heavier, but she walked through it unbroken. In silence, she knew the real test was still ahead. ChatGPT said, her hand lingered on the leather headrest, ticket firm in her grasp. His voice carried sharp and careless. "This isn't your seat." She didn't flinch. "It is." Her tone was even, the kind that carried weight without rising. He leaned back, smirk widening. "First class? Doubt it." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was heavy, filling the cabin like smoke. Eyes shifted from screens and magazines, now fixed on her. Some looked away quickly, others didn't bother. Her chest tightened, but her hand never trembled. Not again, she thought. Not another battle where dignity was mistaken for weakness. She slipped the ticket closer, placing it on the armrest so he couldn't ignore it. "Read." His laugh was short, meant to belittle. "You must have confused your row. Coach is—" "Row 2A, she cut him off, voice steady but soft, every syllable controlled. For the first time, his eyes flickered. A crack. He glanced at the ticket, then back at her, clinging to arrogance. "Still doesn't make sense. Seats like this don't belong." The word hung, unfinished but clear. Someone coughed nearby, unease creeping. A flight attendant's heels clicked closer, sensing tension. Her voice lowered, almost a whisper, but carried further than his. "You don't decide who belongs." The smirk faltered, just slightly, but enough. The air shifted. Strangers leaned into the silence, waiting. She stepped back half an inch, not retreating, but letting the weight of her calm press against his. Denial. The man looked at her, then at the cabin, realizing for the first time that his theater had an audience. And in that moment, his laughter felt thin, his certainty unsteady. The flight attendant finally arrived. "Is there a problem here?" Neither answered right away. The silence did the talking. The man leaned back, smug, arms crossed like he had already won. The flight attendant hesitated, the small rectangle of paper trembling in her hand. She tilted it toward the cabin light, squinting as though checking for flaws. The pause stretched too long. "This doesn't seem right," the attendant whispered, almost to herself. The woman kept her voice steady. "It's my seat. 2A, that's what it says." The man chuckled, leaning in. Maybe you misread it. Happens. His tone wasn't loud, but the smirk carried far. The attendant shifted, glancing between the boarding pass and the woman's face. Ma'am, I'll double-check. A murmur rippled through the rows. Passengers leaned in, not to help, only to witness. The woman stood straighter. She did not raise her voice. You scanned my ticket at the gate. It beeped green, did it not? The attendant's lips parted, but no words came. She simply held, the pass higher, as though silence could undo the truth. The man filled the gap. See? Even she's not sure. Maybe this is a mistake. Her fingers curled tightly around the strap of her bag. She felt the heat of 50 eyes pressing on her skin, the weight of their whispers like stones. Every instinct urged her to shout, to claim the space that was hers. But she didn't. Instead, she let the quiet settle. Let them see her stand still while they wavered. The attendant lowered the pass, eyes uncertain. I'll need to confirm with the system. The woman nodded. Once do that. The man's smirk faltered, just slightly. And in that silence, the kind no one wanted to name, it wasn't her dignity in question anymore. It was theirs. Her silence hung heavy, her boarding pass still clutched tightly in her hand. She turned her head slowly, meeting the man's smirk without blinking. For a brief second, his laugh caught in his throat, though he quickly disguised it with another scoff. You're really going to stand there like you own the place? He muttered, leaning back in the seat he'd claimed. She exhaled softly. I don't need to prove what's already written, she replied, her tone steady, her words measured. The flight attendant shifted nervously, eyes darting between the two of them. Passengers nearby leaned closer, pretending not to listen while drinking in every word. The man chuckled again, louder this time, as if trying to draw support. Guess money can buy you a ticket, but not class. Her lips pressed into a faint line. She didn't bite. Instead, she studied him, the way his bravado masked a flicker of unease. Her quietness was not weakness, it was control, and he felt it pressing against his chest. The attendant cleared her throat. Sir, please, lower your voice. Lower my voice, he snapped, cutting her off. She's the one causing the problem. Her gaze never wavered. The problem isn't me sitting here, she said softly. It's you not believing. I belong here. The words landed sharper than she intended, but she didn't take them back. His grin faltered. Around them, whispers shifted, sympathy leaning toward her now. The attendant looked down, ashamed, muttering, I'll check again. The man adjusted in the seat, his mocking smile thinner now, his confidence cracking in the stillness. She left behind, and she simply leaned back, unbothered, her calm eyes cutting deeper than any raised voice ever could. He shifted in his stolen seat, smirking as if the attention fed him. But the quiet hum of phones being raised changed the air. One by one, passengers tilted their screens, recording. The woman remained still, her calm presence suddenly more powerful than his grin. Really? He scoffed, gesturing toward the cameras. You people love turning everything into a scene. Her eyes flickered to him, then to the phones. It's not a scene, she said softly. It's history repeating. His smirk faltered, just slightly. A cough from the row behind broke the silence. Someone whispered, "Keep rolling. Don't stop." She folded her hands on her lap, her voice, steady, carried without effort. They never believed us before. Now at least there's proof. He leaned closer, whispering with forced confidence. No one's going to care. It's just a seat. Her gaze didn't move. It's never just a seat. The weight of her words landed heavier than shouting could. Passengers shifted uncomfortably, sensing something larger at play. The mocking smile he wore only exposed his unease, each twitch of his lip betraying the fear of being seen too clearly. Another passenger muttered, Unbelievable. Still happening today? Phones captured every flinch, every pause. The woman did not flinch. She sat as if the world had slowed, her silence louder than their voices. He rubbed his hands together, restless now, eyes darting toward the aisle. She whispered finally, almost to herself, "One day they'll ask why we stayed quiet, but not today." The moment hung heavy. Every red light blinked like a warning, ensuring the story could no longer be buried. And for the first time, he looked smaller than the seat he had stolen. The silence after the phones lifted felt heavier than the hum of the engines. A door clicked open, slow and deliberate. The captain stepped out, his pressed uniform stiff, his gaze sharp. No one spoke, only the sound of plastic seat covers shifting as people straightened. "Captain," the flight attendant began, voice clipped. "There's been a misunderstanding. The gentleman here." The captain cut her short, his tone quiet but final. "I've seen the boarding chart." His eyes swept the aisle, then landed on the woman who hadn't raised her voice once. "That seat is hers." The white passenger shifted, a forced laugh breaking. "Look, man, it's just a seat. Why ground the flight over this?" The captain leaned closer, voice still even. "Because if she doesn't sit there, no one flies. Not this plane, not today." A ripple of gasps rolled through the cabin. Some lowered their phones, others held tighter, recording every second. The air changed. Authority rearranged itself. The man stuttered, cheeks flushing. "This is ridiculous." The black woman finally spoke, words calm, steady. "What's ridiculous is thinking I should move just to keep the peace." The captain nodded once, affirming her. "She stays. You choose. The seat you bought or the exit." For the first time, the man faltered, eyes darting between lenses aimed at him. His voice cracked. "Fine." He sank back into his row, smaller. "Now!" The captain straightened, his presence filling the cabin. "We depart when order is respected." Passengers exhaled, the tension thinning but not gone. What lingered was heavier, the proof that silence could command more than shouting. The engines rumbled again, but the real flight was dignity finally taking its seat. Her eyes stayed fixed, on the seat in front of her, but her mind wandered elsewhere. The leather of the airplane chair blurred, morphing into polished mahogany tables under fluorescent lights. She had sat there before, surrounded by men in dark suits, all leaning forward. When she spoke, only to repeat her words minutes later as if they were their own. She had smiled, swallowed the sting, and told herself patience was power. But patience had limits. A voice tugged her back. "Ma'am, please take your seat," the flight attendant repeated, softer now, almost cautious. Her throat tightened. "Do you know how many times I've been told that seat isn't mine?" she asked, not loud, but steady. The attendant blinked, caught between duty and discomfort. Passengers shifted in their chairs, unease spreading like smoke. She let the silence hang, then added, "Boardrooms, meetings, contracts. My voice was always too loud, or too quiet, or too black. I learned to work twice as hard for half the credit. And now here I am again. Different room, same chair." The white passenger cleared, his throat suddenly restless. "This isn't about race," he muttered. Her gaze cut toward him, sharp yet calm. "Isn't it?" No one answered. The weight of her question pressed heavier than any turbulence could. Even the hum of the engines seemed muted, as if the plane itself was listening. She drew in a breath, slow, deliberate. "Every seat I've fought for, I've earned. This one is no different." The cabin quieted. People didn't dare look at her, yet couldn't look away. For once, silence didn't erase her voice. It amplified it. And in that stillness, Her dignity filled every empty chair she had ever been denied. Her chest tightened as the man leaned. Back in her seat, arms spread wide as if claiming more than just space. She kept her voice calm. "Sir, you're in my seat," he smirked. "Pretty sure I'm right where I belong." The words lingered longer than they should have. Passengers glanced, then looked away, some pretending to scroll on their phones. She remembered conference rooms where she was told her ideas were too aggressive. Hotel lobbies where clerks whispered, "Sorry, no availability," while rooms remained empty. Each moment stitched itself into the fabric of this one. Her fingers brushed the ticket in her hand. "This isn't about belonging. It's about boarding passes." He laughed, dismissive. "Then maybe you should ask them to print you a new one." Silence pressed in. The flight attendant shifted uncomfortably, her professional smile faltering. "Sir, can I see your boarding pass?" He waved her off. "I'm fine here." She spoke again, quieter this time, but firmer. "You're not fine here. You're in mine." The air grew heavy. No shouting, no scene, only truth spoken softly. The attendant finally reached for his stub, her hand trembling as if touching fire. The wrong seat number glared back. The smirk faltered. He cleared his throat, avoiding her eyes. For a moment, his confidence cracked. She didn't gloat. She didn't need to. Years of humiliation lived behind her silence, and this was just another brick on the wall. Only now, others could see it too. The man stood, slower than before. His swagger dulled. She slid into her seat, exhaling carefully, as if her dignity had weight. Something too long denied, now reclaimed piece by piece. The low hum of the cabin air mixed with the restless stir of voices. Some leaned in, whispering sharp, clipped, judgments that cut through the tense silence. "She's making it bigger than it is," a man muttered, shaking his head. Another, sitting across the aisle, whispered back, "No, it's not just a seat. You can see it on her face. This isn't the first time." Eyes darted to the front, then back down, ashamed of staring too long. The CEO sat composed, her hands folded neatly, but her stillness carried a weight everyone felt. "She should let it go," a woman hissed under her breath. "Let it go." Another passenger snapped softly, careful not to be overheard by the crew. "That man walked into a seat that wasn't his because he thought it should be his. That's not a mistake." The air thickened. Every murmur revealed something unspoken. Bias, fear, discomfort. A teenager in row 7 tugged at his mother's sleeve. "Mom, why won't anyone do something?" The mother didn't answer. She just pressed her lips tight, eyes fixed on the seat back in front of her. The CEO didn't flinch at the words, but she heard them all. She had trained herself to. Years of conferences, lobbies, boardrooms, always whispers just loud enough to bruise, never loud enough to confront. "Maybe she's used to this," someone whispered, pity mingling with unease. That line landed heavier than any insult. The truth was clear. The cabin wasn't just waiting for the crew to decide. They were weighing themselves too. Every silence stretched into complicity, every whisper choosing a side. She finally lifted her gaze, steady and calm, and in that stillness, several passengers looked away, guilt etched across their faces. Her pen scratched fast across the page, the kind of urgency that comes when a story feels bigger than the room. Across the aisle, the flight attendant leaned toward a colleague, whispering low, but the words carried anyway. Why risk delaying everyone over this? The woman in the stolen seat caught it, her eyes narrowing, not in anger, but in recognition. She'd heard it before. Those quiet bargains people made to excuse cruelty when it was inconvenient to resist. The reporter's gaze flicked between them, her jaw tight. "You realize," she murmured softly, "that what you're saying is the story itself." The attendant straightened, startled. "I didn't mean—" "You meant exactly that," the reporter cut in, not unkind, just steady. "You meant that order matters more than fairness. That silence costs less than confrontation." The attendant swallowed, eyes darting toward, oh, the man who lounged easily in the CEO's seat, his smirk unbothered. "It's not my decision," she whispered. "No," the woman in the aisle replied at last, her voice calm, low. "But it is your choice." For a moment, the hum of the cabin grew louder, every cough, every shuffle filling the silence left behind. The flight attendant's lips pressed into a thin line, words dying in her throat. The reporter didn't look away. Her pen moved slower now, deliberate. She was no longer just documenting, she was bearing witness. The weight of the truth lingered in the air, fragile but undeniable. And the whisper that was meant to disappear became louder than any announcement the cabin had heard that day. The CEO leaned back slightly, her composure unbroken, but inside she felt it. The shift had begun. The man leaned back, arms crossed, his smirk unbothered. "Go ahead," he said, eyes flicking toward the phones raised around him. "Record all you want. No one's going to care." Her silence held. The cameras clicked, screens glowing in every corner. "You think this matters?" His voice sharpened, irritation slipping through his arrogance. "You're wasting everyone's time." A woman, 2 rows behind, whispered, "No, you're wasting it." The man turned sharply, but her eyes didn't move from her screen. The flight attendant shifted uneasily, voice low. "Sir, please, just return to your assigned seat." He laughed, short and dry. "Do you even know who I am?" Her hand trembled, not from fear but restraint. She breathed slowly, watching him unravel one word at a time. "No one cares about your little protest," he muttered, though his eyes darted nervously at the recording phones. His smirk faltered. The quiet grew heavy, filling the cabin with something unspoken. People leaned forward. The arrogance that once felt untouchable now looked fragile under the weight of so many lenses. Finally, he snapped, "Turn those off!" But no one did. She still hadn't spoken. She didn't need to. The world was speaking for her now. Through the steady red dots blinking on every screen, through the silence pressing against his bravado. For the first time, he looked cornered. His voice cracking beneath the noise of nothing. And still, she waited. The cabin fell silent, the hum of engines swallowed by the weight of one sentence. "Either she sits, or no one flies," the pilot's voice echoed, calm but unyielding. The man in her seat froze, fingers gripping the armrests as if he could anchor his arrogance in the leather. "What?" His voice cracked, disbelief spilling through the practiced smirk. The flight attendant swallowed, eyes wide. "Sir, the pilot means exactly that." A ripple went through the passengers. Phones lowered slightly, some glances flicking nervously toward the cockpit. "Are you serious?" the man demanded, trying to force control back with a growl that only revealed his uncertainty. I paid for this seat. Sir," the pilot interrupted, calm, measured. "This isn't negotiable. Everyone's safety depends on compliance. You will move, or we will not take off." She inhaled slowly, steadying herself as centuries of indignity coiled in her chest, her fingers unclenched. She hadn't needed to argue. The pilot had done what centuries of polite protest could not. "Move," he repeated, softer now, as if speaking to a stranger he no longer recognized. Passengers shifted in their seats, whispers fading. A few exchanged looks, some nodding subtly. A quiet acknowledgement that justice had arrived without a fight. The man's jaw tightened, his body rigid. He looked at her, trying to muster a challenge, but the look in her eyes, calm and unbroken, stopped him. She stood slowly, collected, dignity returning with every step toward her rightful seat. Each movement deliberate, measured, reclaiming what was hers. The man slumped, defeated not by words but by the shift of power he hadn't anticipated. Around them, the cabin exhaled as if a long-held breath had finally been released. The room was buzzing, but she stepped forward as if the noise didn't exist. Reporters scribbled, cameras clicked, and the flash of phones turned the space into a stage, yet her calm remained unshaken. She didn't need to raise her voice. Her presence spoke volumes. "Ms. Daniels, can you tell us what happened on the flight?" one reporter asked, voice sharp but tinged with curiosity. She inhaled, steady, letting the silence stretch just long enough for it to matter. "I simply asked for my seat," she said quietly. Her eyes met the cameras, unwavering, each lens, reflecting a history of dismissal she had endured silently for decades. Another reporter leaned in, notebook poised. "Did you feel threatened?" "I felt judged," she replied softly. "Not by me, by centuries of assumption, by everyone who's ever decided who belongs where before I even spoke." Whispers rippled among the crowd, some nodding, some exchanging incredulous glances. The white man's legal team shifted uneasily nearby, his confident posture eroding under the weight of public scrutiny. "Do you think this will change how airlines treat passengers?" A voice pressed. She paused, considering. "It has to. Change doesn't start in boardrooms alone. It starts when silence is broken, when dignity is demanded, not asked for politely." Flashes continued, phones circled closer, and murmurs grew louder. He attempted to interject, clearing his throat nervously. I don't know," she said, calm but firm. "This isn't about excuses." A hush fell over the press hall. Her composure radiated authority, turning what could have been humiliation into undeniable power. The room shifted. Every headline, every viral clip amplified the imbalance he thought he controlled. Hands trembled, his face flushed. She didn't gloat, didn't smile. She simply walked toward the exit, letting history record itself in real time. The courtroom storm had begun, and she had already won the first round without a single raised voice. The room went still as she straightened, her presence commanding without a single raised voice. Cameras hummed quietly, reporters poised, pens hovering. "This was never about a seat," she said, calm but unwavering. "It was about worth." A murmur passed through the crowd. Microphones leaned closer, capturing her words like a lifeline thrown across decades of dismissal. He shifted in his chair, fingers fumbling with the edge of the table. I didn't realize." Her gaze met his, steady, piercing. "You did exactly what you thought you could get away with, and now everyone is watching. Not me, you." He swallowed hard. I never meant to." "You never meant to," she repeated softly, almost a whisper, each word landing like a small verdict. "Privilege doesn't need intent. It needs acknowledgement." The room was quiet except for the soft scribble of pens, the click of cameras. Witnesses leaned in, absorbing the tension like it had weight in their own chests. "Do you understand what that means?" she asked, directing the question at him without raising her tone. His face betrayed the slow crumble, cheeks pale, lips pressed tight. I understand now," he whispered, voice trembling. Reporters paused, sensing the magnitude, the quiet justice unfolding. The world had shifted in a single room, in a single carefully measured statement. Her composure radiated, dignity, his arrogance dissolved imperceptibly, silently, but irreversibly. "I hope you remember this," she added, voice low, deliberate. "I hope this is a lesson you cannot ignore." He nodded, though the motion was small, almost defeated. No outburst, no confrontation, just recognition and the subtle surrender of long-assumed superiority. Around them, witnesses exchanged glances, some impressed, others uncomfortable, all aware that they had observed something rare, the unmasking of entitlement without spectacle, the restoration of quiet dignity. She turned, leaving a silence thick with understanding, the room holding its breath as history quietly recalibrated in real time. The captain's voice echoed across the cabin, steady and unwavering. Justice begins with refusing silence. The words cut through the low hum of the plane, carrying weight heavier than turbulence, heavier than years of unspoken grievances. A few passengers shifted, their eyes widening, phones lowered, caught off guard by authority meeting arrogance. He didn't raise his voice, yet the firmness in it forced attention. The man who had refused to yield a seat swallowed hard, a flicker of panic crossing his face. "She's sitting where she belongs," the pilot continued, voice calm, precise, an anchor in the storm. Every syllable pressed the invisible line, of accountability closer to the arrogant passenger. Whispers erupted, soft but tense. "Did you hear that?" someone murmured. Cameras tilted, capturing every reaction. The flight attendants glanced at one another, disbelief etched across their features. One, nervously brushing her hair back, whispered, "This is unprecedented." From the back, a reporter's pen scratched frantically. "She's not just any passenger," another voice added, a mix of awe and uncertainty. She owns half of the company." He froze, the arrogance draining, replaced by disbelief, then shame. I had no idea," he muttered, trembling slightly, fingers tightening around his armrest. She remained composed, unshaken, eyes scanning the cabin, noting the subtle nods, the faces frozen in admiration, in discomfort, in reckoning. Not a smile, not a word, just quiet dignity radiating like sunlight through clouded glass. The investors, previously murmuring in side conversations, now leaned forward, some standing, cameras flashing, realizing history was unfolding mid-air. The world had paused, time bending to witness a confrontation far greater than a seat dispute, privilege unraveling, authority asserting, dignity claiming space. He lowered his gaze, the weight of recognition pressing into him, the subtle collapse of entitlement visible in the tremor of his hands. Around them, the room was quiet but alive, absorbing the lesson, the revelation, the quiet revolution enacted in a few deliberate words. She finally exhaled softly. A shift, subtle but final. The room held its breath. He sat frozen, phone trembling. In his hand, scrolling past endless notifications. Each headline burned a little more. Arrogance exposed, privilege unraveled mid-flight, passenger stands while man collapses. His eyes flicked to the messages, unanswered, unopened. His daughter's name lingered at the top, ignored. "Dad," he whispered, voice cracking. No reply came. Only the cold glow of the screen reflected back at him. He tried again. Another. Ring. Nothing. From the corner of the screen, social media accounts scrolled relentlessly. Retweets, shares, commentary. Every clip of him refusing to yield a seat was dissected, mocked, criticized. Even acquaintances he once relied on for approval had vanished, profiles empty, silence echoing louder than words ever could. He leaned back, stomach tightening, heart thudding. The office emails he'd ignored over the years suddenly seemed trivial, meaningless. Every corner of his carefully constructed life, curated, controlled, safe, had been exposed, dismantled by nothing more than witness and truth. A neighbor appeared outside the window, glanced his way, then looked down, walking past. Even familiar faces avoided eye contact. His world had shrunk to the glow of his phone, a relentless mirror showing the collapse of what he had always assumed was untouchable. He tried to speak, to reach, but the words stuck. The apology he rehearsed never left his lips. Silence became louder than any confrontation, louder than any courtroom, louder than any private reckoning. The privilege he'd wielded like armor, the confidence that once carved space around him, dissolved into nothing, erased by exposure, by witnesses who refused to look away, by a world unwilling to normalize arrogance anymore. He sat there, quiet, scrolling, the life he had known slipping away without sound, without confrontation, without mercy. Silence had become the verdict, permanent and undeniable. She pressed her palms against the cool glass, eyes tracing the city lights below. Each flicker of neon, each window glowing in apartments and offices, reminded her that life went on, yet something had shifted, something unspoken, profound. A colleague knocked softly, voice hesitant. "Do you want to say something?" She shook her head, lips barely moving. "No, it's enough that it's done." The colleague lingered, unsure, as if expecting applause, a statement, a flourish. There was nothing, only the soft exhale. She allowed herself, a long, quiet breath that carried years of restraint, of patience, of dignity endured in silence. Outside, the streets hummed with ordinary life, oblivious to the storm she had weathered. Yet inside, the air was thick with the victory of restraint, a power that required no shout, no glare, no headline. She didn't need cameras. She didn't need witnesses. Her assistant stepped closer, holding a folder. "They're asking for a statement." She took it, fingers brushing the edges, then set it down untouched. "Let them talk. Let the facts speak. Silence speaks louder than any words we could offer." The assistant nodded, slowly understanding that what had been achieved wasn't in the headlines. It was in the calm, in the refusal to play by rules that demanded submission or spectacle. She leaned back in her chair, the city sprawling below, and let herself feel it fully. The stillness of justice realized, not shouted, not framed, but lived. Every chair that had denied her, every glance that had questioned her worth, every whisper that had tried to erase her presence, all of it dissolved in that single, unbroken breath. Victory didn't need applause. Dignity didn't need acknowledgement. History, patient and observing, had already taken note. She simply inhaled, exhaled, and let silence carry what noise never could. The cameras focused on her, the bright studio lights reflecting off the polished desks. Yet she didn't flinch. The anchor cleared his throat, leaning in. "Ms. Harrington, the country is listening. What would you say to those who doubted you?" She paused, letting the hum of the broadcast studio settle around her. Her hands rested calmly in her lap. "Doubt has always been part of the journey. But dignity isn't granted by others. It is lived, even in silence." The words hung in the air, simple but weighty, carrying every slight she had endured. Every smirk she had endured silently, every door that had closed before she could enter. A producer whispered from behind the camera, "You want to—" She shook her head, firm but gentle. "No. Let it be this way. The truth doesn't need flourish. People will understand it." The anchor nodded, sensing the gravity beyond the words. "And the airlines' policies are already changing. Your story is unprecedented." She gave a small, almost imperceptible smile. "Then let it be remembered for what it should be. Not about a flight, not about a confrontation, but about understanding what's owed to every person simply for existing in a space." Behind the camera, assistants exchanged glances. The words weren't dramatic. They didn't shout. They didn't demand applause. But they reshaped the air, rippling outward. Offices began adjusting. Executives paused in their notes. Reporters rewrote headlines mid-script. The story became more than a moment. It became a lesson, a shift, a mirror held up to society. She leaned back slightly, the echo of her voice lingering, as if the studio itself absorbed it. Outside, viewers nodded, argued, reflected, but all heard it. And in that calm, measured voice, a ripple of lasting change spread across planes, boardrooms, and living rooms. The flight was over, but the course of history had subtly, irreversibly shifted.